Hi YouTube. Okay, so I have been getting a few questions from a few people, and they were asking about knives and what knives I recommend and what would be best for them. Not to be a pain or anything like that, but there's a series of questions that you really have to ask yourself before you go looking at a knife and looking for knives. And honestly, it really boils down to what knife is right for you. And all I can do with that is kind of point you in the right direction of where to go. Some people do not have a large budget, so therefore their knives are going to be on the lower price scale. There are still good knives there. You just have to be picky and choosy, and you got to know what you're looking for better than what you would normally. On the other hand, you know, there are $100 knives that are nothing but crap. So you know, as much as anybody would love to disagree with me, there are $100 knives that just they just won't work. So you know, it's kind of dependent on what you buy, where you buy it, and all that stuff. What I mean by $100 knives that are crap, honestly, there are fantasy knives that are sold at malls and stuff like that, that are $100 and more, that are just crap. They just are crap. And so, you know, you gotta understand that. So, you know, the fact of the matter is that if you follow the basic guidelines that I'm putting out to you in this video, you should be okay, or you should be able to at least make a decent choice. Maybe not the best one for you, but that comes in time. So without further ado, I've got a table full of knives, and let's go ahead and get to looking at the cutting. Okay, so let's go from cheapest pretty much to most expensive. Okay. This right here was probably the cheapest. It's a $10. It's a Coleman knife. I picked it up at the Wally World. It had some scales on it. I broke those off and removed those because the scales were just crap. The knife itself, though, the blank itself, isn't that bad. It is pretty thin, so I mean, you know, I would think twice before I started batoning with it or anything. But for what I paid for it, it's not bad. It definitely holds a pretty decent edge. And it's actually a pretty decent little thrower. So you know, as a quick backup knife, you know, it's something to definitely have. In a end of the world type situation, this would make a perfect trade knife. Basically, because if you think of the things that were out there in the early American days, you know, we traded. That's how a lot of things were done. So we're with trade, and one of the highest priority items to trade was knives. So you know, this would make an excellent trade item. So I would recommend, if you are prepping, to have, you know, a couple of these in bulk, maybe 10 of these, maybe 15, just something as trade items. Also, they're pretty light, so if you are kind of queasy about having a gun, or you cannot have a gun due to local law enforcement or anything like that, if you carry 5 or 6 of these with you, you at least have something to fall back on. And because it is cheap, if you stab somebody with it and you can't get the knife back out for whatever reason, you can just leave it in them and go to your next weapon. So that's a little bit of a combat knife strategy, but but it works. So 10 bucks. The main selling points with this would be the fact that it's easily sharpened. It's thin, so it's going to be inherently easier to sharpen. It is a full tang. You can see that all the way through. So the likelihood of this knife breaking under any stress is just minimal. So, and I just wrap the handle in bank line. I'll show you how to do that wrap later. Maybe not in this video, but it'll be in one in the series that I'm making. So the sheath is decent. It's not the greatest sheath, but it's a $10 knife. What can you expect? Enough said. Okay, this one, it's just a simple balisong folder. A screw fell out of it, so I modified the screw part. It's not exactly the greatest knife in the world, but it does have a strong, being a balisong, it does have a pretty strong lockup mechanism, so I'm not ever really worried about this knife closing on my fingers for any reason. So there you have it. So this was about 20 bucks. It's always good to have cheap knives to back you up, because like I said, you know, if for some reason you lose it, it won't break your heart. Okay, next level. This is my trusty CKRT. I carry this with me pretty much everywhere I go. I bought this up in Wisconsin for about 80 bucks. They have them cheaper online, and the only thing is that they don't have this particular model cheaper than 80 bucks. I don't know why. I think it's probably because it's Tonto point or whatever. The edge at the tip is a little bit ripped out. That's pretty much from throwing practice. I hit a piece of metal, and I think I hit a piece of steel actually, in a tree or something, and ripped out my edge a little bit, and I'm still working through it, but either way, not a bad knife. Okay, next we have the Cold Steel Shanghai Shadow. This thing's like 30-40 bucks, somewhere in there depending. It's got a 7-inch willow leaf blade. You saw my review on it. Pretty much enough said. This is not necessarily a bushcrafting knife. This is a fighting knife, combat knife, whatever. If you're in a situation, you could do a lot worse than having this in your hand. That's for sure. Here's my GI Tonto. I have modified it since you guys saw it last. Basically, I took off this back Julian because it wasn't needed and is in my way. So I took it off. I also took off the coating on the spine of the blade using my journal tool, just because I didn't want it there, and if I need to use it to strike a splint off, strike a spark off of, with this being 1095 high carbon steel, I can do that. So that's pretty much it. The handle, the scales with it, one of the screws backed out during throwing practice. I'm not sure if that was the company's fault or more of mine, because I have taken the scales off of it. So, you know, maybe it was the Loctite didn't hold because I took the scales off, in all honesty. Because I'm always playing around with different handle options and stuff like that. The scales themselves, the polypropylene scales, which actually I think I have right here. These are great little scales for what it is. I just didn't like the way they felt in my hand. Just didn't. So that's why I took them off of both the GI Tonto and the Shanghai Shadow. For this is about 40. I'm wanting to say you can probably get it cheaper on Amazon. For what I paid for it, and the fact that I can modify it and modify it relatively easily, I would recommend this knife as a bushcraft knife, pretty much for anybody. Cold Steel says that it's a 7-inch blade. I've measured it. It is not a 7-inch blade. It is a 6-inch blade. The reason why they call it a 7-inch blade is because they're measuring from the top of the quillion, which is not. I use it as a sub hilt. So since I use it as a sub hilt, it's a 6-inch blade, not a 7. But either way, with it being a 6-inch blade, that actually is probably best anyway. Because for bushcrafting it's a good thing to have. Also, the secondary point here, if I'm really going to have to do some heavy task like I don't know, chop through a turtle's shell or bring this secondary point across the turtle's neck or something, it really allows me to get some really good strong pressure on it by having my thumb on the spine here and coming down with that point and just digging in, and I can really dig in with this. So this secondary Tonto point is very effective for that. The backside, like I said, I've sharpened that. The reason why I have is because it's always there. It's a good thing to have in a combat situation to be able to use this back cut. Also, you know, if I really want to, you know, I can kind of use it as kind of like a thumb skinner here. If I was doing more of a thumb skinning type situation, I would probably use the Tonto point like this, and then use the secondary edge to do my thumb skinning from there. But thumb skinning is something that you use more with well, if you're opening up a fish, or you're opening up a squirrel, or maybe even a possum, something small, small to medium sized game, you're not going to do much thumb skinning when we're talking about deer. So there you have it. That is the GI Tonto. Now then, I had a couple of knives that were made a couple years ago by ZP from Lost Treasures. I don't know if he's still in business or not. I think he is. He had a YouTube channel, ZP. It was thelosttreasures.com or Lost Treasures channel. He was well, a guy that made stuff for Master Park, so Chosun Ninja, and these are his utility knives design. You'll see that each one of them has been sharpened repeatedly. Each one has been pretty much clobbered and sent through the mill. I have taken these knives and I've carried them in the bush, I've carried them out fishing, out hunting, out doing everything that I do, and I've made some modifications to them, and quite honestly, these things are rock solid. I'm not sure how much he charges for them anymore, but they are a worthwhile investment if you have the money. I'm thinking it was like $100 at the time. And so anyway, this one, the reason why the tip is the way it is, basically I was doing some throwing practice, and there was a piece of sheet metal, and well, needless to say, the point went through the sheet metal, and actually the tip of the knife actually went through the sheet metal. That's good. But the problem is that as the point of impact spread out, it basically snapped the tip off. So I went to work with it with a file and modified it up and just modified the tip geometry a little bit, and there you go. It's good to go. With this one, I have used it to strike some sparks off the back of it with a flint to ignite charcoal, so it does work. These are all carbon steel, by the way. Also, you'll notice right here, I have ground that to a hard 90-degree angle with my file, so that I can use it for my ferro rod or the modern fire steel. Excuse me. monofile steel. I've done the same thing with here. It's not as effective as this one. I think it's due to the width in the metal. It'll still work, it'll still throw a spark, it's just not as effective as this, but it doesn't matter. The great thing about the hole here is you can always attach a rope to it or anything like that, so that then you can have like a dragon's tail type situation there. The sheath that it came with, when I first got it, I was kind of on the fence about it. But the thing is that as I've modified the sheath, I found that it's actually a very good sheath for it. It just slides right in, slides right out. I got a piece of bank line here. Basically what happens here is I thread my belt through this section, letting the knife hang off my belt here, and then this secondary loop I put over the front here. And the thing is that I carry this right in front of my I carry this in front near the belt buckle, so that if I need to grab it, all I have to do is push that loop off, and now I can draw and get to work. And I can draw from either hand. I can draw from my right hand, or I can draw from the left. So that's something to be aware of with that. The other two I just stick here in Shanghai Shadow sheath. They not only are they a great little utility knife, they are also good for small tasks or for anything like that for bushcraft. So that's something to be aware of. So anyway, that's just some really quick options. The main thing that you really want to deal with this is you have to understand that your knives have to be what you want them to be. It does me no good. It does nobody no good for you to choose a knife, but when you get out in the field, it's the exact wrong knife. That's why we need to train now, and begin training now, so that you'll have an idea before something happens of what knife that you want. My advice is, if you are just starting out in a knife situation and just starting out and everything, buy a couple of cheap knives. They sell them at Walmart. Are they the greatest quality? No, they're not. They're not. And are they going to be enough for you, especially later on? No, they're not. On the other hand, it will get you an idea of what you like and what you don't like. I will tell you that there's some big no-nos. Big no-nos. Do not go into the bush with only a folding knife. If you go into a self-reliant situation with a folder will not have the resilience that you need for the higher stress activities. I have no problem throwing this. Yeah, it is a thin blade, so if I'm throwing it at, at a tree, and if my throwing technique is a little less than off, can it bend? Sure. Can it break? I've heard of it, sure. But I would much rather have this to throw than my folding knife, because if I throw my folding knife, there's a good chance that lock will break. So, that's something to be aware of. With this, I can always attach it to a stick, and now I have a spear. So, with the folding knife, I wouldn't trust that. So there you go. We'll start on modification and how to modify and sharpen your blades in the next video. I appreciate your comments. I appreciate your views. I appreciate your time. Defend your homes wisely.